Welcome to the show Gold Squadron Gays. It's the podcast where two Star Wars loving gays talk about and review their favorite Star Wars content while also being gay as hell. I'm your host, Bradley Brower.
I'm your other host, Charles Rogers, and welcome to 201 episodes of the show. I checked. That's correct.
It is correct. Okay, good. Otherwise, we were going to be really embarrassed.
I'm the type of person who, before I leave the house, I have to, walk around and make sure all the light switches are off. I need to make sure the fridge is closed. I need to make sure that the oven that I have not touched all day and have had no reason to suspect is on is off. So naturally, I am the type of person to check and make sure this is actually the 201st episode before we record the 201st episode of the show.
Okay, good deal. Because I was like, wait, let's just make sure before we go crazy. Yes, it's our 201st episode, which is crazy because does it even feel like we've done 200 episodes? I mean, it really doesn't. Because I'm thinking back, I was trying to count in my head, all the shows, and I was like, okay, how many shows are there? There's not that many if you really think about it. There's 5. And so I'm 5 or 6 or whatever. And I'm thinking about well, shit, I guess we have covered all the shows. We did cover one movie, and yeah, we don't have too much to cover. I mean, it's really weird thinking about where we've almost covered the entirety of Star Wars, just obviously not all the books.
Star Wars TV, I will say.
Star Wars TV, we're almost done because we just have Skeleton Crew now to look forward to, but that's about it.
Yeah, and we actually had to rebrand the whole show because initially it was it was a TV podcast very
just
specifically.
TV. Yes.
We pitched it very specifically as a TV podcast because that's what both of our backgrounds are in.
Correct.
Between your producing and my screenwriting degree being a focus in TV, that was the original pitch. And we discovered two things. One, we were eventually going to run out of shows and end up just having to do the Clone Wars and Rebels.
Right.
And I don't think either of us wanted to tackle the monstrosity that was Clone Wars and Rebels.
Right.
I'm going to leave that to cooler people than me to attempt. And the other issue was that we started doing all these other episodes that were not the TV shows and being these are really good, actually. We're quite enjoying this. So that's why we ended up having to switch our intro from the TV to the general Star Wars thing, because we do other stuff. And that's going to come up in a question that we're going to be asked, because we are doing a Q&A today. That was what we decided to do for our 201st episode.
Yeah, so this is just a bonus episode. So if you're they're not covering Skeleton Crew yet, fuck this. Then don't listen. It's okay.
Go away.
This is just a fun, bonus episode for the new year.
I mean, you played it far enough, hopefully, that all of our various metrics will look good. Or just, turn the volume off and let the episode run.
Yeah.
And still give us the listen.
If you want to support us, but you don't want to listen to us answer questions,
if you don't want to listen
just
to our
play
voices,
it in the background on mute. I would love that.
No, I asked a couple of different places. Most of these questions are going to be from our Blue Sky account, but I did ask on our Blue Sky, and I asked in a couple of Discords that I'm in, hey, submit some questions, and we'll have a good time answering them. Because I think we both needed a break, too, after the fucking behemoth that was the Acolyte.
Yeah, for sure. Just something just to cleanse the palate, right? We need something because we can't go from the Acolyte to Skeleton Crew like that because it's really a drastic change. They're two totally different shows, and so the fact that Skeleton Crew is still going on right now, we don't have the full story, so we can't really talk too much about it yet until it's almost over, thankfully, so we can finally get into it. But it's just it just happened to work that way that we timed it like this. So I'm excited to see where that goes, but I'm glad for the palate cleanser for sure.
Yes. And then we're taking a week off next week as well, and then we'll be diving right into Skeleton Crew. But first, we did solicit some questions, so we're just going to answer. I am going to start with kind of a 0.5 prelude, if you will. One of the places I did solicit questions was the Dark Side Divas Discord, just because we share a lot of listenership. With the Dark Side Divas, to which Chris and Steph both responded. Steph responded with, yeah, I got a question. Why you so awesome? And Chris responded by posting a clip from Invader Zim of a man screaming, some sort of doll thing screaming, why his, oh, I think that's Zim himself. It's been years since I've watched the
Oh,
show.
okay. I'm like, what are you
Screaming,
talking about?
why his head so big? Why his head so big?
Why is his head so big? Why is his head so big?
Charles here with the thing Charles fucked up. I have no idea why, when we recorded this, the entire plot of Invader Zim leaked out through my ears and down onto the floor. Why is his head so big is Gur, not Zim. That's why he's in the human disguise. Bradley was kind enough to remind me of this while editing, so I don't know why I completely forgot that. And I'd like to address both of these real quick. To Steph's question, why you so awesome? My response is, no, why you so awesome? And to Chris, my answer is, it's where I keep all my complaints about Star Trek V. Seriously, if you listen to this show and you don't listen to Dark Side Divas, I highly recommend you go do that. I love Chris and Steph. I dog on Chris all the time, but he is one of my best friends out in LA. He's introduced me to Dune. He's introduced me to Star Trek. Genuinely, Chris and Steph are doing some of the best fandom content that I listen to. They have Dark Side Divas, they have Holodeck Divas, they have their Baldur's Gate 3 streams. You should absolutely check them out if you have not. They're both fucking rad. They're awesome. We've had them on episodes. I can't wait to have them back on more episodes in the future. All right, let's get into the questions I actually wrote down on the sheet.
Okay.
And we're just going to trade off asking these questions. So our first batch of questions here are the ones that I got from Blue Sky.
Okay.
And our friend Hope from J Guys and Jedi and For Light and Dice asked a Blue Sky question at Hope Mullinex, which was, what is the Star Wars hill you both will die on?
Oh, that's a good one. I have a silly answer. I mean, if you want me to give my silly
Give
answer.
your silly answer, because I'm going to have a very serious answer.
Okay, good. Yeah, let's do mine first then.
Let's do yours first.
The Star Wars hill that I will die on is that the Mandalorian should not have been in the Book of Boba Fett.
Explain.
At all. They should have deleted that episode and not done it.
Really?
Yes. That may be a controversial hot take, but I think
that
because
is a hot take. That is a hill you have picked to die on.
Yeah, because here's the thing. Well, the only reason I said that is because I have my Book of Boba Fett poster sitting in front of me, so it was randomly in my head. My problem with the poster, like just looking at the poster, is the Mandalorian and Grogu are literally like huge on this poster for no reason. My thing is that the show is about Boba Fett. The show is not about the Mandalorian. Why did he get a whole ass episode to himself? I mean, I get it. I understand why it's there. I understand the creative choice why it's there. I understand the connection to the actual Mandalorian show, that Book of Boba Fett is genuinely just a spin-off / side mission of the Mandalorian show. It is essentially Mando's season 2.5, right? We've always said this. We even said this in our coverage of Book of Boba Fett. My thing, though, is that they could have still made the Book of Boba Fett show without this. You could have saved everything that they did in there, even taken out the parts that Boba Fett is connected to, and literally just done it in the Mandalorian episode 1 of season 3. Like, why the fuck was this here?
I still think they should have. I really do believe, like, I love Wyatt. I'm going to continue to shout at other people's podcasts. Wyatt from First Steps, a Star Wars podcast. Absolutely fucking fantastic podcast. You should listen to it. They're almost to the original trilogy. They're so close to the original trilogy.
Oh my God, hurry up.
I know. That's my reaction. I'm sitting here with bated breath like, I need Andy to get to the original trilogy like yesterday. But Wyatt's theory, I agree with, that when Rangers got canceled, they added stuff from Rangers into season 3 of The Mandalorian, and it pushed that story content into Book of Boba Fett. Holds a lot of weight, because I still think we should be able to take those 2 episodes out, slot them at the beginning of Mandalorian season 3, and that vastly improves not only the Book of Boba Fett, but also Mandalorian season 3.
100%.
Because now you have more room for Boba Fett to have his own arc and Fennec Shand to have her own arc. And then also that 2 episodes where they get back together, the Mandalorian and Grogu, thematically works really well with Mando season 3.
I agree.
That's what I have been saying.
So yeah, it was just, I mean, like, it's not, I know that's like a super hot take and all, but like, it was just like, it's just a silly, like, it doesn't actually matter to me whether or not they do that, like, if it happened or not. I just think it would have been a better decision to keep it in Mandalorian season 3, only because it's so Mando centric. Like, there really is no reason why it connects to Book of Boba Fett other than they needed to have it in here to set you up for season 3. Like, I don't really understand. And to have him in the finale with Grogu to be with Boba Fett, but like, why? Because Grogu can talk to Rancors? Like, what's the point? Like, we could have figured out other ways to do that without having Grogu be like the savior. Like, it's.
When I watched it with my boyfriend, we binge watched it all in one day.
Yeah.
And I've said before, and I'll say again, binge watching it all in one sitting makes it the good parts of Book of Boba Fett more clear, but it also makes the glaring flaws in it even more obvious if you're watching it in order. My hill that I will die on with regards to Star Wars, stop telling me that fucking dagger is ancient.
You said this last week, didn't you?
I will keep fucking bringing it up because it's become my personal mission now as part of a broader hill that I'll die on, which is the Rise of Skywalker is fine. It did not break all of Star Wars. It is not ruining the franchise forever. It's fine. Is it my favorite? No. Do I defend it more than the other movies? Yes, I feel I have to, because people will come up to me and say things like, how did Ochi of Bestoon have an ancient dagger that points to the Death Star? Nowhere in the movie do they say that it's ancient.
Check the script.
That is literally never said in the movie.
Right.
There's coordinates that lead to the spot where you're supposed to look at the thing. Like, him going out on this mission from the Sith Eternal was like 5 minutes ago. The dagger's not ancient. Men at parties. Stop telling me this. Stop getting drunk and insisting to me that the Rise of Skywalker is bad because the dagger isn't supposed to be ancient. And also, everything in the movie is either explained. This is the other hill that I'll die on. Everything in the movie I felt like is pretty adequately explained, either by the script itself or by the visual cues in front of us. Somehow Palpatine returned is a hokey line, I will admit. It's ridiculous. However, the very next few lines of dialogue explain to us quite clearly that there is Sith alchemy and dark science and cloning that they can use to bring people back. So there's actually an explanation more in the script.
Right.
I hate that the hill that I have to die on is that the Rise of Skywalker is fine, but the Rise of Skywalker is fine. And that's my hill I die. Oddly not The Last Jedi. I find that it's easy for me to defend The Last Jedi by just going, I was in a really dark place when I watched it, and I needed to see my childhood hero overcome his struggles. And that usually shuts people up pretty effectively when they're trying to criticize The Last Jedi at me. It's true. I had just gone through a major period of having to put my life back together. And watching Luke do that was incredibly impactful for me.
There you go.
I'll talk a little bit more about that later on in the questions. That's my answer.
Okay. Those are good hills. I think they were pretty
Those
decent
are good hills. Those are good hills.
It's like that meme from what is it, Tangled, where they have all the knives pointed at Flynn Rider and they're like, what Star Wars take?
That was a thing on Twitter a couple of years ago that you would see that image. It's like, what Star Wars take got people like this? And mine is always The Rise of Skywalker is fine.
That's fair.
It's okay.
Here's the thing. In 10 years, we're all going to be like, why aren't they making more sequel content? Like, why aren't they all doing the same thing? Like, it's literally the same thing they're doing with prequels now. It's like, just give it another 10 plus years. People are going to fucking love the sequels. It's going to be a whole thing. It's a cycle.
There is a show that I used to watch called Zero Punctuation that's like a video game review show. A lot of the early content is not aged well. I still think that the newer stuff that I saw of him before the show ended was pretty good. What it works great as, because he was making the show for so long, is it's a fucking fantastic time capsule to where you can see kind of how people talked about certain things online, how that's evolved and changed over time. If you want to know how people were talking about the prequels, go watch his reviews for The Force Unleashed and The Force Unleashed 2. And that will show you just a snapshot of the way people not only hated the prequels, but it was taken as a given, as a basic fact of life that the prequels were bad. That was just how they were talked about at the time. Like, yes, obviously the prequels were inferior to the original trilogy. Like, obviously, they were
Obviously.
garbage. And George Lucas, like, absolutely shat the bed with them. And it's exactly the same. I remember when the sequels were coming out, it's exactly the same. There are criticisms you can make of the sequels, and I certainly have them, but everything repeats itself. And it was the
Yeah.
same stuff about some of the TV shows when they were coming out. We saw the same stuff when The Acolyte was coming out. We saw the same stuff when The Clone Wars was coming out. These things change, and in 5 or 10 years, we're going to get think pieces about how the sequel trilogy was good, actually, and they need to be making more of that. Just in time for the Rey movie to come out.
There you go. Our next question on Blue Sky is from It's Like You Know, and I love that username, by the way. What moment in Star Wars makes you want to hide under the table?
That fucking bat thing from Fallen Order can kiss my ass.
The bat thing from
The bat thing from Fallen Order. You haven't played Fallen Order, which will be relevant to a later question. The bat thing from Fallen Order, I just hate for some reason. Also, anything that's like visceral, like gross, kind of like getting sprayed with slime or getting like sprayed with alien goo. Anytime that happens, I'm just like, especially if you're not in armor, if it's on your skin, I'm just like, Jesus Christ. No, stop it. I actually don't mind the spiders. This may come as a shock to people, but I actually don't mind the spiders that much.
So is this more of like what moment makes you like cringe, or is this more like
hide under the table, like scare you, cringe you, like make you cringe? Like, did you have a visceral reaction you want to hide yourself?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, yeah. So I'm gonna get hate for this. Mine is the CGI Carrie Fisher in Rogue One.
Really?
Yeah, it's
that one scares you.
It's just because it's so uncanny. Like, I don't like it. Like, they obviously improved it much later on when they did, Luke, I think in Book of Boba Fett is actually pretty good. He's okay in Mandalorian. I think he was really good in Book of Boba Fett. But I think because it was the first-ish time they were doing it more so. I know they were doing it with Tarkin, but Tarkin looks to me way better in the movie than Carrie Fisher does. I mean, there's just it's night and day. I think it's because it's such a simple shot. I think that's part of the problem, is that it's well lit, and then she's wearing white, so it's like a very outlined kind of thing. I think that's the problem with the scene. I think all the Tarkin stuff is in the dark, and it's all black background. It looks very he's also old as fuck, so it's great. It's just an easy thing for them to do. I think those look fantastic compared, even though it's still uncanny. It's just not as uncanny. I think because we know what Carrie Fisher looks like in A New Hope, and I think the problem is it just doesn't read in your brain that's really her. Something about it. I'm sure if I were to watch it again, it wouldn't be that bad. I think it just, what I visually remember it just in my brain, I always go I go, I don't like that. Yeah, I was like, why did they do that? They literally should have just got Billy Lord to do it, and then it would have just made my life way easier. I honestly would have preferred that. Or just the actress that I think is underneath the CGI, I think also genuinely looks like Carrie Fisher.
It was the same thing. You mentioned that the Book of Boba Fett one looks better than the Mandalorian, which I agree. It at least looks better than the Mandalorian. It's one of the best digital face masks that they've done. But also the actor that plays him in Book of Boba Fett looks a lot like him.
He looks almost identical. People were all like, oh, Sebastian Stan should play, young Luke Skywalker. And I agree, because he's hot, and also he looks vaguely like Mark Hamill.
This is accurate.
But the actor they got for the Book of Boba Fett also could be fucking Luke. If you told me that was a young Mark Hamill, I would have believed you.
Also, Mark Hamill was there. He was on set. Which is also so bizarre that they used respeecher for Luke's voice, and I'm like, you literally have Mark Hamill there, but also if Mark Hamill doesn't sound the same, which admittedly he's significantly older, you guys have Matt Mercer in your Rolodex.
Yeah, there's so many things you could do.
Battlefront. They seem to be that seems to be going away, which is
I was gonna say, yeah,
it's nice that they seem to be. For Ahsoka, they chose to use Genevieve O'Reilly for Mon Mothma, and they chose to use they choose to have Leia kind of off screen,
right?
And
stuff like that, yeah.
A lot better.
There's here, not to go back to our other question, but here's a Star Wars hill I'll die on: recast the original people.
Yes.
just recast them. It's okay. We're good. Like as long as they vaguely look like Carrie Fisher and Mark Hamill and Harrison Ford, just fucking recast them. It's okay. That's why like I liked Solo. Like if you just go like, yeah, that's just Han Solo. Like you don't like have to get upset because like yes, of course he's not fucking Harrison Ford. Like it's just another guy playing young Han Solo. I can suspend my disbelief. Like you don't have to tell me. Like I think they've gotten better at casting lookalikes, like clearly from the Book of Boba Fett, but like let us fucking see their face. Like if you're gonna cast them.
I haven't seen it, but I have seen clips from Star Trek Discovery of like young Spock and I think young Kirk. Is it the Discovery or Strange New Worlds? It might be Strange New Worlds.
Well, they're in both, technically. They were introduced in Discovery, but then they're in Strange New Worlds. That's the show.
They look fine. I look
great.
at that and that looks like Kirk and Spock to me. Don't have to digitally de-age them to look like Leonard Nimoy and William Shatner. Like
Absolutely
they look
not.
like the characters.
That's all that matters.
Speaking of Mon Mothma, my lovely
Great.
mutual Ash at Bejeweled Mothma on Blue Sky, fellow Mon Mothma stan, asks, what do you want to see from Mon Mothma in the year of Mon Mothma? Remember, she's going to be in Andor season 2, and there's also some books coming out.
That's right. She's getting a whole trilogy, isn't she? Like
right.
books.
Which I'm just going to say that is my answer, The Mask of Fear. It's not her trilogy specifically. It's that. You remember how I've been saying I want an Imperial Senate show?
Yes.
This is the books about that.
There you go.
The Mask of Fear, there's some banger Mon Mothma stuff. I love anytime anyone writes Mon Mothma.
Right.
And they can get inside her head. I think about Contingency Plan daily, which is her story from a certain point of view that explains why she wasn't on Yavin. I think about this story daily. Anytime we get inside her head and really get to explore like her inner turmoil and her inner thoughts and the struggle she goes through really is what makes the character so interesting for me. And Alexander Freed, who wrote the first book in the trilogy, The Mask of Fear, is a fucking fantastic writer.
Okay.
Just absolutely amazing. And so everyone I trust online who has read an early copy of the book tells me it's a fucking banger. So my answer is, even though Andor season 2 is coming out, my answer is getting more inside her head in The Mask of Fear.
Also, side note, Lucasfilm, Star Wars, Penguin House Publishing, whoever is listening, send Charles advanced copies of the books so he can review them on this show.
I need to send them an email.
Because we need to be able to get those too.
Now that we're moving away from doing like just the TV all the time, yes, I do need to be sending them an email and figuring out how to get us ARCs so we can review them.
Also, I mean, I still want advanced copies of the show too. Like, if you guys want to send me Skeleton
I also
Crew,
want
you want to
those.
send me all that good stuff. You guys want to send us Andor before Celebration? Please be my guest.
Please send it to me. It will make my life easier.
I will love to pre-record all those episodes. Trust me. I will sit down on a full fucking Saturday and watch all of them, and then review them, and then do a whole ass episode about reviewing them. I mean, if you want. But
by the way, the trilogy is called Star Wars Reign of the Empire. The first book is called The Mask of Fear. It is by Alexander Freed. Book 2 is going to be by Rebecca Rowanhorse in 2026. And book 3 is going to be by Fran Wilde in 2027. Side note, Fran Wilde also wrote the canon short story No Contingency, which is Mon Mothma's short story from a certain point of view for Return of the Jedi.
Oh, there you go. Let's see. What do I want to see from Mon Mothma in the year of Mon Mothma? I want to see, well, two things. Obviously, we're going to watch her in Andor 2, so that's a given already. More Genevieve O'Reilly, that's a given.
Please be in Ahsoka season 2 as well, and also the Heir to the Empire. Just keep casting her. Actually,
yeah, that's what I mean. Like, I think they just need to keep her in all of them. I want her story to actually. That's a real good thing I want. I want her to be in the Mandoverse era. Like, I want to see Genevieve O'Reilly do older Mon Mothma in the current canon timeline or whatever. Because
you mean besides her little bits in Ahsoka, right?
Because she's like barely in it. I need more. Like, I need her to be a full character in a show, like in a Mando show. Because I like how she's her full character in Andor, and I need her to like be also a part of after, like, you know what I mean? Like, she clearly was a very important part of the New Republic, I would assume. So I need her to like show up more because like she was there starting it. So where the fuck is she? Like, I need her on there more.
I'm going to add another answer. Not necessarily about what I want to see from Mon Mothma, but this is related to Mon Mothma. If Mon Mothma is going to be showing up more in the New Republic shows, I want to see on screen Sinjar Rathvelis, because he works for her.
Who was that again?
Sinjar Rathvelis is a character from the Aftermath books. He is my beloved. He is a gay alcoholic ex-Imperial torturer who winds up working with the rebels before the Battle of Jakku, and then winds up getting a job working as one of the aides for Mon Mothma.
So what you're saying is you just want a Mon Mothma show.
I do just want a Mon Mothma show.
Okay,
I
great.
mean,
That's all you
broadly,
have
I
to say.
always want a Mon Mothma show. But if she's going to show up in these Mandoverse shows too, which I think she also should, I would also like to see him in those shows with her.
I see. Okay.
Because he's much more, he doesn't hold his opinion back. He's very barb-tongued, and I think putting that type of character with Mon Mothma could lead to some really interesting dialogue and some really interesting moments.
Up next, we have a question from Peyton Long, who is at Paytonic49 on Blue Sky. Their question is, what is your favorite Star Wars video game from the Disney era and your thoughts on them and their stories? Like, I guess the examples are Fallen Order, Survivor, Outlaws, etc.
This question has to go to me only.
I was going to say, because
Bradley
I
hasn't
don't
played
think I
any
played a
of them.
single one.
You haven't played a single one. My favorite Star Wars video game from the Disney era is actually Lego Star Wars The Force Awakens. And that is because prior to the Lego Star Wars The Skywalker Saga, it was the only sequel era game that I really revisited. And I really felt like was a full game, like a full multi-hour game experience. And for a long time, that was where I got my sequel game fix, was only in Lego Star Wars The Force Awakens and just replaying that game. Now we have Lego Star Wars The Skywalker Saga, which I also think is really good. But Lego Star Wars The Force Awakens had this sort of moment in time where it and I just kind of got each other. As far as a bunch of the others that have come out, I thought Fallen Order was really good. I have played it through twice. I loved it. I thought Survivor was good, but not as good as Fallen Order. I thought the open world elements of Survivor really hampered it. On the other hand, I thought the writing of the characters became more interesting in Survivor. And I'm also really excited because they kind of knew they were going to get this third game now, so they kind of were laying the groundwork as we continue to go through. And I also like Fallen Order and Survivor as a singular linear narrative across the two games, and I'm excited to see how it ends. Battlefront 2 2017, I played the campaign. It was pretty good. I like Iden Versio a lot. I played the DLC add-on, the extra add-on, the Project Resurrection stuff. I was really disappointed in it. It promised to be this like back half of the story in the sequel era. It's 3 missions. It basically adds nothing to the overall story. I have not played Outlaws yet. I have downloaded it. I have not played it yet. However, I have finally, and I'm telling you this now, Bradley, on the air, I finally played a little bit of Star Wars Squadrons. I got a new computer, and I got the Star Wars Squadrons that you gave me.
Oh, that's right.
Like 3 years ago, you gave me this game.
That's
and
right, because I had like
never
some free
worked.
code or something.
You had some
Yeah,
free
yeah.
code, and you were like,
That's
do
right.
you want it? And I was like, yes, I'll take it. I've had it for like 3 years. I've never played it.
Oh, shit.
And I finally played it. It works on my new machine. So I still
Okay.
have to play the campaign for that. I'm still working my way through a Dragon Age canon run, like just for me. But in between the Dragon Age games, I have it queued up to I'm going to play the campaign for Squadrons, and then I'm going to play Outlaws in between. So I will report back with Squadrons and Outlaws. What I'm really excited to play Outlaws. I have broadly liked Ubisoft games. They're hit or miss for me, but generally I like their thing. But everyone who's played Outlaws reports back to me that Outlaws is really good. Sort of my thing with the Disney era was I think EA dropped the ball really hard because EA sucks. And I might have just disqualified myself from ever writing for BioWare, a thing that I would like to do. However, I will say that their parent company, EA, sucks. And part of how EA sucks is in the period the sequels were coming out. This was during the era of the live service and the microtransactions. In fact, Battlefront 2 was what started the ball rolling of killing that. Like, microtransactions, live services are still around, but at the time they were coming out between about 2015 and about 2019, the whole concept of a live service and like in-game purchases and things like that had just fucking exploded. And companies were getting away with a lot of really predatory stuff. Like they were putting out these games that were basically unfinished and being like, well, we're going to patch in the back half of the game later. It's a live service. Basically, this is just the pilot episode of the whole video game, or locking things behind these in-game purchases, or like directing you to the micropayment shop all the time. It was ridiculous. And as a consequence, too, a lot of major AAA publishers tended to make the types of games where they could easily be monetized. And so you weren't seeing a lot of narrative-driven games. Where I think Star Wars kind of lives the best is honestly in the narrative-driven games. The ones I remember, the ones that I remember being like really impactful to me are the ones that had a strong core narrative. So Knights of the Old Republic, Knights of the Old Republic 2, Republic Commando, the game, not the books, but things like that, where I would remember these. And there weren't really a lot of those coming out when the sequels were coming out. And Battlefront 2 came out. Battlefront 2 2017. Battlefront, the first Battlefront that they came out with, didn't even fucking have a single player. Like, there was no story. I played it for 5 minutes and got bored of it and went off to do something else. Battlefront 2 comes out, and because it's a Star Wars game, all the predatory stuff suddenly collided with the fact that Star Wars fans are unpleasable, shrill, screaming motherfuckers. And this blew up and it became a whole thing. But I think that's part of why now we're starting to see these. One, EA has essentially, they've not lost the license, but they had an exclusive license to make Star Wars games during the sequels. And now they no longer have an exclusive license. They're giving that license to other people. Yeah, you had Traveler's Tales, but Traveler's Tales was going to keep making the Lego games regardless of what you did. Like, there was no way they were going to stop making the Lego games. But now you have, like, Ubisoft making Star Wars Outlaws, for example. You have something else that's not EA, and we're also starting to see, I think, a return to some of these narrative-driven games. That's some random thoughts on Star Wars video games from me, the one person on this podcast who actually plays them.
Anyway, moving on to the next question.
Yes, the next question is also for me, but I was not going to make Bradley say this name. So
I know how to say it.
Okay, you want to read? You want to read
the question? I know how.
You want to read the question from Colton, from my co-podcaster on For Light and Dice,
Absolutely.
Voice of IA1N and Coriel Colton.
Colton, thank you for this question that I know how to pronounce. Charles, how would you personally make the yuzahn vong canon?
Good job, Bradley.
First of all, you have to explain what the yuzahn vong is, because I really don't know. But like, what's the Cliff Notes version? What is it? Like, the fastest way you could explain what the fuck yuzahn vong is? Because honestly, I feel like I kind of have an idea, but I don't actually know what it is.
So the very Cliff Notes version of what the yuzahn vong are. So the yuzahn vong are these aliens in Legends from outside the galaxy. They are religious fanatics. They are like bio-supremacists, like machines are evil. And they invade, and there's this whole war, and it spans like 24 books or something. Like, it's this insane, it's 19 or 22, I forget is the actual number, but it's this like insanely long series. Like, on my shelf, I have a shelf of Legends books next to me. It takes up a whole shelf by itself.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Just the paperback. None of them are even hardback.
Oh, gosh.
It takes up the whole shelf. That's how fucking long this thing was.
So how are you going to make them canon?
How am I going to make them canon? So I would keep the angle to where they are invaders from outside the galaxy. And I would also keep the angle that they don't use the traditional machines that we are accustomed to in Star Wars, that their tech is all literally alien. I would change everything else. And this could go either one of two ways for me. I would either make it so that we have no idea what their deal is. That when they were thinking about bringing them into the Clone Wars, because there was kind of a storyline for like a yuzahn vong kind of X-Files alien encounter kind of thing that was in the original pitch. I liked that. I liked the idea that they're this alien thing that's outside that comes in, and the encounter is like this freaky like encounter. So that's one way I would do it. The other way is I would need to give them a different motivation. Part of my problems with the New Jedi Order and like the yuzahn vong specifically is it does kind of lean into the like the religious fanatics from far away are coming to invade us narrative. And I don't love that. So I would give them a different motivation for why they are invading the galaxy. And the one I thought of off the top of my head is Starkiller Base. If you can turn a planet into a system destroying machine, that's going to have cause for your neighbors to be like, we need to maybe go take that away from you. We maybe need to make sure you can't keep building this technology, because at the rate you're going, you're going to blow the fucking galaxy up. You people are going to get the entire universe killed, and we can't have that. But broadly, that's how I would do it. Is I would make some changes to the motivation, or I would make it to where they're this completely alien thing that is just invading the galaxy, kind of almost like the Darkspawn. I might do them like the Darkspawn. That might be another interesting way to do them. The Darkspawn are from Dragon Age, Bradley.
Okay, Colton. So thank you so much for.
I'm not going to get on Dragon Age. We're going to move on, but that's my answer to the question.
My life, but thank you.
That's my answer to the question. I will read the next two since Bradley read two in a row.
Fine.
Hope sent us a bunch of questions.
I see that.
I picked three. She sent more than three. I picked three that I thought we should answer on this episode. Other questions may be answered at a later date and different location. But Hope asks a couple of questions of us. Since I, meaning Hope, have two ranking lists, what is the best made Star Wars versus your personal favorite Star Wars? It doesn't have to be movies.
Oh, interesting. So what's the best Star Wars thing? And then what is
the best made Star Wars thing and your personal favorite Star Wars thing?
That's a good question. I mean, you're gonna have to come back to me for a second because I gotta think of
this. I will answer. The best made Star Wars thing, in my opinion, is Matthew Stover's 2005 novelization of Revenge of the Sith. It is a banger. There is basically no criticisms I can lob at it that are not present in the original movie. Kicks unbelievable amounts of ass. Everybody should read it, even though it's Legends. It doesn't matter. It's genuinely that good. My personal favorite Star Wars thing, that would be The Last Jedi. For reasons mentioned earlier in the episode. It has nothing to do with the quality of the movie. The movie came out at a particular moment where I needed to see that story play out. And that was something that I was able to hold on to as I was making changes, taking accountability, learning to be a better person, learning to step up and be somebody who could be relied on and somebody who could, be a force for good in the world. That's something I needed to see on the screen at the time. And so The Last Jedi is my favorite just because it has such a deep personal meaning to me. Was that enough time to think, Bradley?
Yes. So this is going to be really random. People are going to be like, what? Okay. So I think my personal favorite Star Wars thing, just in like just something I enjoy and just I like, I really liked the Phasma book. I think that is just such a fun story and it's so cool. It's like Mad Max in space. Like who doesn't want that, right? Like and also I just love the vehicle that they tell you the story in of Vi Marati being tortured. Like I fucking like that's such a good like a spy being tortured and then telling you a story. Like why is that not a TV show? Like that would it would be that a TV show or just a fucking good movie. Like Phasma would be such a good ass fucking movie. And Gwendolyn Christie in like just bring her back please. Phasma, I'm begging you. Like it would just be so iconic. Okay. And I want to see that. That's my favorite thing, I think. Just because I love Phasma so much as a character, I think that the book itself is just such a fun fucking story. Like they hit all the marks for me in that. And I think one day I want to see that as something. Whether I don't care if you do it as a fucking cartoon, just do it. Like make a visual component to that book because I think it's so underrated. I love it so much. But what I think is the best made Star Wars thing in general, this is going to be random too. I think Galaxy's Edge.
Really?
I think it's just because it's not, I don't like the narrative part of Galaxy's Edge. I think that's just kind of lame Disney, like whatever. Disney just likes to have like a narrative in their stuff all the time. I don't really care for that part. Like, the First Order's looking for Rey and blah, 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 whatever. That's silly. I don't care about that stuff. Just the visual aspect of walking through Galaxy's Edge and just like living in a Star Wars, essentially. I think it was made with so much fucking care. And I think they did such a good job of realizing Star Wars like on a like tangible like level for people just to like casually see and like to, like walk through the parks and just be a part of. Like just walking through that little section that was just shops, like right next to like the cheaper food. What's that? Ronto Roasters.
Ronto
Like,
Roasters.
yeah, once you
Yes.
pass Ronto Roasters and you go to that little market kind of area where the bathrooms are, like that to me was like quintessential. Like this could be a movie set. Like that to me was like, wow, like you could film here. Like if there's not a Mandalorian like episode or part of the movie where him and Grogu are walking through this actual piece of set, like I feel like it would be a waste because it's already built. Like I don't know. So I think in terms of like the best made, like physical, tangible thing, like I feel like I don't know why, but that something about Galaxy's Edge just does it for me. I feel like that's such a good thing.
Second question from Hope. What is your underrated episode / discussion on Gold Squadron Gays? What are you most proud of?
That's a good question.
We haven't fucking killed each other after 201 episodes.
I know. Like, what's the best episode?
The most underrated episode. That the question wasn't best.
I'm
the
sorry. You're
question
right.
was
What is
underrated.
the most underrated? Well, that would be like, what do I think is the best episode? Because it's, you know what I mean? Like,
I don't think it's the best episode, but for me, the most underrated episodes are our Darth Vader comics coverage.
okay.
It was this like watershed moment to where we were working in a different medium. We were working with characters we don't normally get to work with, Vader and Palpatine and the Inquisitors and these other characters, but it was close enough to the TV format that we were able to give it our normal treatment. And we did that for some of the other comics. They weren't as good. I think that what really nailed it was how good the Darth Vader comics actually are. And I think our coverage of them, I'm really proud of that coverage. I think we did a fan-fucking-tastic job of going through those comics and really committing to going through them. The other one that I thought's kind of underrated is our very brief stint on the Clone Wars micro series.
Okay, that's what I was gonna say. Is in terms of underrated, I feel like nobody liked our coverage of the Jedi Tartakovsky
Genndy
Clone Wars,
Tartakovsky series.
and I thought that was some of like the coolest stuff that we talked about. Because like, don't get me wrong, I think it's just because I'd never seen it. So for me, that was genuinely new Star Wars. Like I know that like obviously you've seen it like a million times, I'm sure, but
Oh yeah, for sure.
you know what I
Like
mean?
that
And-
was my Star Wars when I was a kid.
right, and then you had to wait like a week just to watch 13 more minutes of Star Wars. But I think that like that is that's some of the best stuff that we've done. I love talking about that show because honestly, to me, that show is my headcanon for right before Revenge of the Sith. So if you watch at least the last episode is I think like the whole Palpatine getting kidnapped and by Grievous, all that bullshit, like that is what they are talking about in Revenge of the Sith opening crawl. Like that is the same fucking scene. Like there's nothing to change. Like I all works. It's all iconic. It all works.
They've never confirmed it. They've
That's
never
what I'm saying.
confirmed any alternate version of it.
I
We
love
don't
it.
have
And also, there's so many things from that. Like literally, we get a scene where you can tell, like you can watch Luke and Leia get fucking conceived. Like, are you fucking kidding me?
It's amazing.
Like, that is iconic. So if you have not seen the 2005
Asajj Ventress
Clone
is
Wars.
here, like slaying her
slaying,
first appearance. This is her first
Oh,
appearance
God, yes.
in the chronology. I can't remember if she had been in things before this, but like as a kid, that was the first time I saw Asajj Ventress.
Right.
Was on that. No,
So
it's
the fact that she's such a big part of it too, and like, and also, what is this name? Dirge? Like that's such a fucking
Dirge.
cool ass character. Why the hell is he not in anything else in Star Wars other than the comics? Like
yeah.
bring
Thank
his
you,
ass
Alyssa
back.
Wong, for
Yeah.
bringing him back and putting him in the comics. Like, thank you for that. But why is he not in more of it? Yeah,
Yeah, like fuck that.
There's
Like,
a
come
point-
on.
look, Legends is ridiculous. Like
Sure.
I'm not gonna sit here and lie to you. Legends is ridiculous, and it has its moments that are ridiculous. But then there's some stuff that they do that, particularly in the Clone Wars, where I'm just like, this is so fucking cool. Like, are you kidding me? Like, this is awesome. And it would be those two for me. It would be Darth Vader and it would be the Clone Wars micro series episodes that we did. As to what are you the most proud of? I think just that the show has managed to stay on track so far with regards to what I wanted the show to be when we started. I wanted it to be where we could dive in and we could lend our sort of individual expertises to analyzing these pieces of media not like sitting here and saying everything is the best thing all the time. You should never be critical of it. We are only going to be positive because I don't think that's a healthy way to approach media, but also not getting into the thing where like, this is not my Star Wars, whether my Star Wars is the original trilogy, whether my Star Wars is the prequels, whether my Star Wars is the sequels, anything particularly, whatever it is, that we've taken each new thing as it comes and we've judged it on its own merits and we've looked at it in the broader context. And so I'm really proud just of the discussions that Bradley and I have had, because also too, like, we had to learn how to have these discussions as a duo. We had to do 201 episodes to figure out how to talk to each other with the cadence. Like, if you go back and you listen to the early episodes, you can kind of tell we're still figuring out even how to talk to each other, like vocally. Because Bradley, you and I mostly talked over text before we started the show.
Yeah, pretty much just through Instagram. We didn't really like have any kind of like phone conversations or anything.
No.
Like that. Because we're not old as shit, so we don't we don't call each other.
I have phone conversations with people, but like, yeah, and that was one of the things to keep in mind is like Bradley and I hadn't seen each other in person since 2017 or so. We started the show in 2021. So for 4 years, we'd only communicated via basically Instagram DMs when a new Star Wars thing would happen. We would talk about it. And then even after we started doing the show, we had to spend some time figuring out what the cadence of the show was going to be. Like, how am I going to talk in such a way that it bounces off what Bradley is saying, that we're having this conversation? That's the other thing about podcasts. Podcasts are a conversation. They're not just me like giving my opinion at Bradley while he nods along, or Bradley giving his opinion while I nod along. It's a skill that you have to acquire, and I think we've done a really good job so far in the show of balancing all of these different plates that you have to keep spinning to make what is, in my mind, an entertaining and informative show.
Honestly, this is just my vehicle just to talk about Star Wars, because I don't know too many people that in my real life that are like, oh yeah, I watched, Andor last night, or I watched Acolyte last night. Like, I have a friend like I work with in reality who watches Star Wars casually. And they just like, they don't really care. Like, they like it, but like they watch it very like super fucking casually. And I mentioned, I think it was like last season, I was like, when I was working on a show with them, I was like, oh, are you watching Ahsoka or whatever? And they were like, no, I haven't started it yet, but I'm really excited. I'm like, oh, great. Like, but they've never seen Clone Wars. They've never watched Rebels. So they don't fucking know who Ahsoka is. So they're like, they're still watching these things because that's just the new audience for Star Wars television, honestly. So it's just interesting. And then like, I sometimes I recommend the podcast like, because I'm like, oh, well, if you want to explain to you, just go listen to my episodes on it, because we'll break every episode down for you if you ever have any questions. And so it's funny that I can say that, but it's like a fun vehicle to be like, oh yeah, I have a Star Wars podcast, so go listen to it if you ever need something explained to you, or you just want to know more about the thing.
Yeah, and for me, this is kind of my like, this is sort of like a little closed off area. I don't want to use the term safe space because it's not really that, but this is sort of like a walled off area where I can just come and talk about these things separately from all of the fandom. Because I'm on social media. A lot of my friends are very into Star Wars and very into various fandom things. And I like having the show to where I can just sit here and talk to you and I can really dig into it in a way that I can't really dig into it when I talk to even my fandom people, where I'm really sitting here and analyzing it with a sense of clarity and purpose. I'll have these conversations and they'll be like back and forth and jumping around all over the place. And these episodes are a really good vehicle for me to be able to sit down and organize my thoughts. And also it's been really helpful to have like you on the show, or know that there's people that are going to be listening that aren't as deep in the fandom spaces, to where I'm checking myself to constantly be like, you need to cite this. You need to explain this. You need to assume that when you're explaining who Darth Plagueis is, you need to assume that somebody hasn't necessarily done all of the Googling to find out who that random guy in the cave is at the end of the Acolyte. You have to try to explain that, because you never know if somebody's just going to be tuning into the episode because they watched this one show and I recommended the podcast to them and they listened to an episode. I want them to be like, totally, what the fuck are you on about? I do have friends that have listened to the show and been like, I don't know what the fuck you're on about. Which I love you. thank you for listening, or at least trying to. But that is something that I've had to learn how to do, and I'm still learning how to do. But I try to make what I say on the show and the information I have as accessible as possible because I've been in the shits for 25 years, 30 years or so at this point. Like just this insane length of time. And even people in my generation, maybe you saw the original trilogy as a very young kid, you saw the prequels, maybe you've seen the sequels, maybe you watched one or two of the shows. Star Wars is for everybody. And part of that is making sure that all of Star Wars is accessible to everybody who wants to learn more about it.
So before we get into our final question, I want to give you some analytics of our show over 200 episodes.
Okay, give us some
Just real
analytics of the
quick.
show over
Just because
200
I thought
episodes.
I thought it would be kind of fun.
Look,
Like,
this
'cause how long
episode's
have we been doing
gone.
this show?
We have been doing this show since February of 2021.
So there you go.
When
So
Bradley sent me a message to be like, hey, I know we were gonna like
Wait.
pre-record some of the episodes, but I kind of fucked up and I hit the button and I kind of
button.
published our first episode. And I
Oops.
went, God damn it, Bradley. And I will tell this story every milestone because it remains the most emblematic story to how the show works.
There you go.
Also, this episode is longer than I expected it would be anyway. So fuck it. Let's do some analytics before we do our last question.
So most obviously, because we post through Spotify, most of our analytics are only on Spotify. I don't have a lot of the Apple Podcast analytics because I don't log into that usually. Only because the way that the system is set up, if I were to go log into Apple Podcasts, I can't actually like do anything to the episode because it'll fuck up because it's posted through Spotify. So it's complicated, and that's all like creator stuff that you guys don't care about. But anyway, I can't really look at the analytics for that, but I can look at it for Spotify because they give us all the stuff. So some of our audience demographics I thought you would be interested in. The percentage right now is our female audience is at 49%. That is our highest currently.
Nice.
Close behind is our male audience at 39%. And then our non-binary audience is 8.4%. And then not specified is 2.3.
That is rad as hell.
Yeah, it's really I love that they have that because it's just interesting to know. But like this is why I love demographics, because I feel like it's such an interesting, like you just never know like who's gonna listen to your podcast. So I just love that.
That's also a really, really balanced breakdown, which is very gratifying to me as a creator. That is a really balanced breakdown. Because one of the things with this show, I try really, really, really hard to make sure that this is a show that feels welcoming to anyone at all. We not always successfully, because we are two cis white men, but we're going to try. So that is a really cool demographic to actually hear, that it's pretty balanced out like that.
And in terms of like age range, probably not really that surprising. Our highest
will not
age
shock
range
me.
is 23 to 27. That's our age.
That does not surprise me.
That's the highest. The second highest is 18 to 22, which is close enough. I mean, that's basically, the same thing. And then right behind, I mean, like almost neck and neck is 28 to 34. So it's like we're in that 18 to 30 range, basically. Like that's like our pretty big chunk of people. There is a small percentage of 35 to 44. That's 8%. And then there is 4% that's 45 to 59. And then there is there is 0.5% over 60 that listens to our podcast.
Shout out to the 0.5%.
So I don't know who
over
you
the
are.
age of 60 that are listening to the show.
Yeah, that's crazy to me, because that's like, I don't even know what that means percentage wise, because it doesn't really explain. It just says percentage, so I don't know what that means out of, I guess, all of our people. But I just found that
shout
very
out to you, whoever you are.
Because we're on Spotify, we are broadcasted to multiple countries as well. Obviously, no surprise, the United States is our largest audience, because obviously we are an English-speaking podcast and we're from America, so that makes the most sense.
We're based in the United States, unfortunately.
Of course, right. And so it would not shock you that United States is the highest percentage of all platforms that listens to us. Close following would be Canada, Australia, UK. Some surprising places, though. I'm looking at like all of them, and some of them say like less than 1%, like, which I'm assuming just means like somebody who had either a VPN on or was in that country.
Somebody in this country listened to us.
Listen to it like for 1 second or like one time. Some really interesting ones on there. Like we have Pakistan, Serbia, Saudi Arabia, Peru, random stuff, right? Like these are like the low ones, but it's just very interesting. But one that is a little bit higher than 1% that I find interesting is Germany.
Really?
We have 2% of listeners
Nice.
listen in Germany, which is just, I don't know why, but there you go. So
Well,
shout out to our 2% of people
Shout out to
listening
our
in Germany.
2% in Germany.
So that was just funny. And then no shock here. So a majority of people do listen to us on Spotify because obviously we're hosted through Spotify. But it's not much more than Apple Podcast, which is close second. Everything else is pretty random web browser, which just I guess that just means that they listen to it in some other platform like Google or I think it's not counting YouTube. So I don't know how many people listen to us on YouTube.
Which you also
but
diligently upload the episodes to quietly in the background. We basically never mention it, but Bradley does diligently upload those episodes to the back.
Yeah, I
in the
just figured
background.
it was just smart to do. And if anybody's just like, hey, I hate listening on Spotify or I hate listening on Apple Podcast, then go listen to it on YouTube. Like, if that's
We're
your
on
preference,
YouTube. You can go
I have
listen
them all
to
on
us.
there, and they're in playlists too. So you can listen to the playlist as if you want to listen to like all of the episodes of Book of Boba Fett, then they're all in one playlist. So feel free to just listen to the playlist as you go. That it's already pre-organized for you, which the other shows won't do. It'll just have all of our episodes in order. So it's pre-organized in playlist order. If there was something out of order, which sometimes we have done that, you can now listen to them in order instead of release order. So it's like, there you go. You can listen to it canonically
beautiful.
in order if you want to.
Yeah, you can listen to it. You can do like the divas do and go in chronological order.
One last thing I want to do in our analytics thing is I want to give you our top episode of 200 episodes.
Who won? Because it's going to be a guest. It's going to be a fucking guest.
Still going strong to this day. We posted this episode May 9th, 2022. This is the Star Wars Book Chat Thrawn Trilogy book series featuring Claudia from RuPaul's Pod Race. It is our most
going strong
still
as
going
our
strong,
most listened to
number one
episode.
ranked episode. It's so funny that like that still is going strong to this day because I don't even remember talking about that. Like that's how crazy.
I blanked this out in my head partially because it was a long episode.
It's 2 hours and some change. Like it's crazy like that. It's one of our longest episodes and it's the most popular. So I just thought that was so funny. The most listened to out of any other one that we've done, which is hilarious. So shout out to Claudia that we you still hold the title as number one. And
number one most listened to.
Yeah, that's such a great fucking thing. And like you said, I think earlier, our least popular is the Inquisitors comic, which just didn't do very good numbers. That
doesn't surprise. Hey, I never thought that anything would bottom out the what was it? What was it that was the
it used to be the Lego.
It was the Lego specials.
It was the Lego specials were the bottom. Currently, more towards the bottom is actually one of the Visions episodes, actually. Yeah, I think it's The Elder is our least liked Visions episode. So,
or at least listened to. Interesting.
Least listened to. Yeah. So
very interesting.
Such a silly little thing, but I love how like that's some of our like before it was the Lego stuff that nobody really cared about, but now it's
like the point is
now we have so much stuff.
Is that our highest listened episodes tend to be people we have on.
Yes, and
so we should have more people on.
That clearly, I mean, if you look at our top 10 episodes, I think every single one of them is featuring somebody. The only one that's not is our pilot episode, and randomly...
Don't listen to our pilot. It's bad.
I think it's just
so
that
bad.
one. And then randomly, Ahsoka Season 1 is one of our more listened to ones in the top 10. So, so that one. And then Mandalorian Season 1, Episode 1.
Well,
so those are like the two big ones without guess.
That was a good look back at 201 episodes. Do you want to ask the final question that Hope submitted that I picked for us to listen to?
Sure. So, Charles, where would you like to see the show go in 2025?
Outside of podcast form.
Okay.
I'm not going to be more specific than that. I'm just going to, well, I'll explain a little bit.
Tease.
So
nothing's set in stone.
It's been a while. Yeah. Nothing's set in stone, but for a while, Bradley and I have talked about expanding out the Gold Squadron brand. And for various reasons, it's just not happened before this point. And with everything kind of settling, Books are coming out for me at a cadence. I'm really settled into Legends Expo and what my responsibilities are going to be with that. I'm really settled into this job for a minute. And with Bradley, on Bradley's end of things, he's had a nice little break because Bradley was running really ragged for a couple of months. Like it was crazy. He needed a little bit of a break. We have this podcast, and this podcast will continue. But we are looking at doing at least one other smaller show, still Star Wars focused, outside of this podcast. And I will say, if you're an avid listener, you'll know that there's a specific area of Star Wars that Bradley has avoided consuming most of. And that may be a clue as to what we are planning. We may also be looking at ways, because this show has not been monetized before. We have ads that we can run sometimes, but we haven't had any sort of direct monetization. Bradley and I pay for the show ourselves. If there's something that needs buying, we buy it. And we are looking at potential ways to offer new content. I'm not going to specifically say what sort of funding platform we may or may not be looking into launching in 2025, but I will say that we are looking at what content we can potentially offer on a new funding platform to bring even more Gold Squadron content, especially with the Star Wars movies getting ready to kick back up again. And we're in a really great time going into this new era of Star Wars. What about you, Bradley? Where would you like to see the show go in 2025 that I haven't already teased out?
I want to see us go to TikTok only. And we're never going to post anywhere else but TikTok. And yeah, that'll definitely last.
I want to see
all of 20.
I want to see another 100 comment thread argument in our TikTok comment.
I love it, honestly, and I'm gonna start doing this. Steph on Dark Side Divas has this thing that she does to make people talk to her on TikToks, and I'm gonna start doing it on ours.
What do you mean?
Yeah, what do you mean comment?
Steph has said that if you get a man in your comments, trying to explain something to you, all you do is just post, "What do you mean?" Then you will get 20 comments worth of engagement from them going on a rant. It's beautiful. It's glorious. I love it.
I'm going to start doing that. So that's what I want to see. No, I'm just kidding. But I do want to see, I like our natural growth. I think it's fun. I do want to start to see, we'll do the private monetization stuff. But I would love to see just like, I don't know if this is a 2025 thing. Maybe we'll find out more stuff after Celebration. But I would love to see more like, I think Lucasfilm maybe should just do this in general. But I think they should be reaching out to Star Wars creators and having them kind of be more engaged with the stuff, because I feel like I think they should handpick people, right? Like I think they should pick certain people that they deem to be like, okay, their positive view on the brand. I obviously non-positive.
They kind of do, but it's tricky.
Yeah. I not that I'm saying like I don't want it to be like propaganda or anything. Like I still want people to be honest about like what they think of Star Wars and stuff. But I also I think, we've talked about it in the past, Star Wars does have a PR problem. And so they don't necessarily have the people defending certain aspects that should be defended in certain places. Not going too much into acolyte stuff, but
I think I can translate the Bradley speak happening here.
Yeah, I feel like we just need better creators.
Yeah, you would like to see more investment in the positive creators and more investment and more partnership with Lucasfilm,
right?
Of which we would count ourselves in there, but this is not exclusive to us. But more of that.
Yeah, just more partnership. I think there's not enough partnershiping going on with just the Star Wars brand. I see it with other stuff, like other content and other shows and other things. I see a lot of it actually. And I don't know why Star Wars for some reason has just stayed out of the creator kind of, I mean, for the most part. There are some, don't get me wrong, there are some people who do it, but not a lot. I haven't seen a lot of Star Wars creators. They mostly like to do stuff with the people in Star Wars usually. That tends to be kind of where they do their stuff. They don't like to have actual Star Wars shows or things. People who talk about Star Wars actually end up doing partnerships with Star Wars. So I don't know if that's just them trying to protect their brand or whatever, but I don't know. I feel like they just need more of a connection with stuff. So what I'm saying is Star Wars, Lucasfilm, send us advanced copies of the episode.
Yes, it comes back to you want your ARCs. That's the thing that people might see in 2025 is they might see more book reviews for current books and movies and things. We'll talk about it. Yeah, I mean, One final thing I would like to see in 2025, and I know that I'm going to see it, is I would like to see Bradley more often. And I am going to see him again in in
Oh, I was like,
April.
you already see me.
I
Okay,
already
yes.
see you weekly, but like
Yeah. No, I see what
it's
you're saying. Yeah.
it was great. This show is what it is, as a result of our wonderful listeners and the people that help support us and the people that boost our episodes and all the wonderful guests we have to appear. But I truly couldn't do this without Bradley. He's fucking incredible. He's an editing wizard. He is incredibly diligent. He is the most dependable person I've ever met in my life, just in terms of showing up to things on time consistently. And this show, really, for me, I couldn't come on here and do my whole scatterbrained analytical thing without him. So that is always going to be my closing note for any sort of retrospective for this podcast, is to say thank you, Bradley, for everything you do to make this show happen.
And thank you for being the Ross to my Rachel. I am, I am the personality. You are the hectic, crazy person who comes up with the Star Wars facts. No, but I appreciate you, and I think we have a fun time, and I think, we're just happy to bring this show, to the peeps, to the
people.
Star Wars people.
And we will bring this show to you going forward in 2025 after we take a week break because we're both fucking tired.
Yeah, we're going to take a break after
We're going to
this.
take a break.
So don't expect our episode next week. Enjoy the Skeleton Crew finale that we're going to be off. And then
we will be. We'll be in the Instagram DMs the whole fucking time afterwards.
Oh,
probably
trust me,
shouting at each other.
We're going to be shouting at each other. But that weekend we'll record our first episode of Skeleton Crew. So we'll be able to get that out to you guys the following week. So that way you will you'll think that your Skeleton Crew stuff is over, and then you'll have a whole nother month and a half of us talking about it. So there you go.
Now, I will say our Skeleton Crew we're looking at potentially trying something a little bit different. So we'll see if that pans out. And if we do, it's going to be an excellent time. Pluggables. You can find Bradley on the credits of a bunch of reality TV shows, including Queen's Court, Temptation Island, The Circle on Netflix, and later seasons of Married to Medicine. You can watch all of those on Peacock or Bravo or wherever you get your reality shows. Please watch them to keep him employed. You can find me on the Star Wars TTRPG High Republic podcast For Light and Dice. Hope, who asked a bunch of our questions, and Colton, who asked the yuzahn vong question, both are fellow cast members on that show. Also, Bradley is a voice talent on that show, playing Yassified Gossip, which is wonderful. You can also read books that I write on Amazon. Those are a gay thriller mystery. I figured out finally how to describe it, Bradley.
Okay, how do you describe it?
It's a corporate thriller / murder mystery hiding within a porn studio plot.
Okay.
That's how I would describe this series. Yes, that's what I'm going with for now. But you can find those on Amazon. It's called Beach House Studios. Bradley, thank you, and thank all of the listeners for 201 goddamn episodes of this show. I still have no idea what the fuck we're doing here, except for running our socials. Thank you for listening to Gold Squadron Gays. Did Charles fuck something up? Email us at goldsquadrongays@gmail.com and let us know. You can follow us on Blue Sky, Instagram, Threads, and TikTok at Gold Squadron Gays. Subscribe to us on YouTube at Gold Squadron Gays, where we post full episodes of this podcast. If you like the podcast, you can also rate us and review us on your favorite podcast app of choice. Please join us next week and every week for another episode of Gold Squadron Gays.
It won't be. This is going to be a shitty season of America's
This is
Got
going to be
Talent.
terrible. This is going to be the worst season of America's Got Talent.
America's Got No Talent. Yeah.
Yeah, America's Talent's being shit. America's Talent is not putting our best foot forward on the world stage. You also said 2005. I just want you to know. 2005 was also a shitty year. Revenge of the Sith did come out, but otherwise it was a shitty year.